Hi everyone, hey Deanna Brown here with K2OH Solutions. I'm visiting with someone really special today, and that is Emily Johnson of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Southwest Idaho here. And our intent is to bring you information from a lot of a huge array of businesses across the country. A little bit of a series we're going to do. We're going to talk about the ins and the outs of how they're handling this entire crisis, how they're maintaining business and helping their team and all from A to Z. So we're going to get started. I'm going to ask Emily some questions, let her tell you about herself a little bit, and hopefully you'll be able to walk away in 20 or 30 minutes with some good nuggets to use for yourself and your own organizations. So good morning, Emily. How are you?
Good morning, Deanna. I'm well, thank you, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time. I can imagine life in the nonprofit world is quite intense these days.
We are learning and growing and changing at a very rapid rate, but we're a good company. I think everybody's doing a little bit of that right now.
I would agree. Obviously, we didn't see this coming at all and had to turn on a dime. So I just wanted to talk through a few of the pieces of your world right now in the organization. And I'm sure you've learned a lot and had to pivot a billion times already. And hopefully some of these things will help some other people along their road as well. So on our team here, we've talked a lot about resilience and the characteristics and coping mechanisms behind that. How are you staying resilient? How are you helping your team do that?
Well, we are a mentoring organization, so Big Brothers Big Sisters matches adult volunteers with kids, and they build a friendship and a relationship, and there are so many positive outcomes from those relationships. But one of the biggest positive effects that we see from these mentoring relationships is exactly that: it's resilience. And so I spend a lot of time learning everything I can about resiliency, because we talk about the impact on our kids, and I decided if I'm going to be able to talk about it, I need to know more about why it matters and how mentoring is helping to build resiliency. And what I learned is that resiliency isn't something that we innately have. It's actually a skill that's learned, which is great because it means we can help anybody develop resiliency. And for us with our littles, it means it doesn't matter where they come from. We can help them build some of those resiliency skills that are going to serve them for their entire life. And the other thing about it being a skill is the more you practice it, the better you become. So we have had a crash course, like a boot camp workout for our resiliency muscle. And again, we are not alone. We recognize that businesses, nonprofits, families, everybody is in this place of really getting to strengthen their resiliency muscle. And so we are practicing it, and we call it, when we're having to make a change or pick ourselves up from a setback, it's nice to name that this is another chance for us to practice our resiliency. And so what we know with resiliency is there has to be a stabilizing force. So for us, it's our mentors, but it can be a lot of things: our own personal mentors, belief in our mission. There could be a lot of things that are that stabilizing force. There has to be some stress, which I think just comes with being in life. And then you have to have a real setback. And then what you need is your stabilizing force will come and pick you up from the setback, help you dust yourselves off and move forward. And it's that pattern that builds resiliency. And so that can happen in the moment, in a course of 5 minutes, over the course of a day, or on a bigger picture for us. So what we do is we recognize that we are getting to practice our resiliency. So there's some intentionality in it, and we are leaning on each other as a team and each of us in our own support systems to make sure that we are self-care, taking care of ourselves, taking time off if we need it, and recognizing that this is a really difficult time. And so we need to be intentional with our actions. So if I need to take a mental health day, if I need to cut out early on an afternoon, if I've had a rough call and I need to talk to somebody and kind of process and have somebody say, yeah, that sounds really hard, that must be difficult, just providing that support to pick us up and dust us off so we can get back in and do some more of that. So we're all leaning on our own support system, both internally and externally, to make sure that we are keeping our cup full so we can get knocked down again, which inevitably is going to happen right now, and get back up and do it again. So really leaning on our core network of support has helped us been able to continue to practice resiliency as different situations come up, which is happening pretty regularly right now.
It is, and that's a fantastic explanation of that, and it reminds me actually that one of the key pieces to being resilient are the relationships that you have around you, right? It's really all about those relationships, whether it's the coworkers or, like you said, the mentors, your family, your friends, all of those things. And obviously, we've all seen such a creative, you know, generation coming forward with how to stay emotionally connected with people and help lift each other up. So that causes me to think actually about the big brothers and the big sisters and the littles, and they're called bigs and littles in your organization. Tell me a little bit about, are they meeting? How are they connecting? And, is it important for them to be meeting now, or is it just kind of everything on hold?
So we had, and as with everything that happened right now, we had to make some very quick decisions. And so we came together as a team, and I think we all immediately recognized that they absolutely need to continue to meet. A lot of the families in our program already have enough stress, whether it's financially, emotionally, just based on their circumstances. Just raising a family in today's world can be difficult. So we recognize that our families are already coming with enough stress. And so what we need to do is try to mitigate that as best we can. And for us, that was allowing these relationships to continue. We couldn't do face-to-face. We know that that's not the option. So one of our really quick pivots was, how do we keep our matches connected virtually? And once you started looking for ways to make that happen, between our staff being creative, our bigs being creative, and quite frankly, our families being creative, we found a multitude of ways to help keep everybody connected, either virtually using pen pals, phone calls, text message, FaceTime. Thank goodness there's technology right now. We are utilizing that to its fullest. So we are proud to say that 100% of our matches are continuing to meet during this pandemic. And our focus has really shifted from building the number of families and matches that we have to how do we support our people right now in the best way that makes sense for them. So we've had to shift our resources to facilitating those virtual meetings, working with families who have some challenges around technology. How do we keep the connectivity piece alive right now? Because we believe it's probably more important now than it's ever been, not just for our families, but specifically for our littles. I read and I think it was an article in NPR that they are categorizing this particular pandemic as an ACE, as an adverse childhood experience. And so I got to tell the team, I said, we always know that a strong, stable relationship is a way to counter some of the traumatic events that can happen in childhood. So if you want to work through some of those events and move to a positive end, these relationships are key for that process to happen. And so right now we're combating ACEs real time. So it is happening now, and we are combating it as it happens, and these relationships are part of that.
What type of challenges are you seeing? Maybe bigs and littles. What what are they sharing as far as their mindset, and what's got them worried, and on the flip side, what are they doing that's great? I know there's some stories coming in that I catch tidbits of on social media, so share a few of those if you could.
I think just the general unrest is really difficult for everybody. I think and we're seeing it with our staff, we're seeing it with our volunteers. In fact, one of our focus has really been supporting our people. And I use the word people intentionally because we are supporting our families and our littles. But we've also seen volunteers that are furloughed or laid off or are unsure about their employment or their income, or just absorbing all of the stress that's happening in the world right now. Even if you're working and financially solid, it's hard right now. This is difficult. So supporting our people is our volunteers and our families, our littles, their siblings, the families on our wait list. Because the uncertainty right now is enough to really cause a lot of anxiety. And then you pair that with people struggling with financial resources. We have families that were heavily relied on the food program at school, and to have that pulled away, and you've got a mom at home with a handful of kids wondering how she's going to feed them 3 meals a day. So how can we help mitigate some of that stress? there's just a lot of anxiety around the uncertainty. And then you put some of those basic needs in, and it can be very stressful. So I was really lucky to talk to a radio station that supports our mission. And as I was talking to the disc jockey, I don't know if they still call him that, the personality, he said, this is crazy, but with all of the things you're doing to make sure that your littles are still connecting with their bigs and playing games and doing all of these fun things, even though it's virtually, he said, I bet years from now, they'll look back and say, hey, remember when school was canceled and we were quarantined, and remember all that stuff me and my big did? Wasn't that cool? So creating that space for joy and play and to let go of some of the stress, even just for a brief period, is critical in your ability to stay resilient. One of the things I learned about resiliency is it's not necessarily putting your head down and motoring through hard times.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you come up for air, being able to refill and rest and recoup. And so I see this time that our matches are spending together as really a very high concentrated dosage of that time. Everything else can go away. It's just you and your little having fun, playing, having some joy. That's really critical, I think, to everybody being able to keep charged up and being able to motor through the hard times. So the stress is across the board on what people are nervous about. But if we can really make sure we're facilitating that time of joy and play and rest, I think it's going to give people the stamina they need to be able to motor through the hard times for as long as they last. We're all trying to figure that out. How long is this going to happen?
How long? Yes. And does it come back? And there's all kinds of uncertainty
Absolutely.
around it, right?
Absolutely.
There is. And as I listen to you describe all that, I think, I've had some really phenomenal mentoring relationships in my life, in my adult life. I didn't as a child. And so as I look at, at the flip side, as we come out, eventually from all of this, and as the years go by, as a little in the program, having a connected mentor during this is going to be something that I'm sure not only will have a powerful effect on them, but they're going to be able to look back and say, wow, that was pivotal for me, having someone like that there. I mean, mentoring relationships are, one of the most significant things that life can bring forward. So I would imagine the stories that will come out in 10 and 20 years as the littles are all grown and hopefully doing mentoring of their own, they'll share some of the stories about what their big sister, big brother did for them.
And I think they become richer as you get older and start to understand. I think it becomes more significant. It was interesting when all of this happened and we were looking at having our matches not meet face to face. As we started talking to our bigs, the offer was we could put a hold on the relationship or we could figure out a way to meet virtually. And not a one wanted to stop meeting. In fact, it was the opposite. They're like, what can I do? What do you need from me? How can we make this work? And I think as our littles age and have their own lives, and when they look back and realize that not only were their volunteers, their mentors, their bigs, there for them, but they were going through their own stress and hardships and still made that a priority. So I think it becomes even richer as you get older and recognize the effort that went into that because the littles were important to them. That message is powerful.
Just what a testament to the human spirit and what obviously phenomenal volunteers, big sisters and big brothers that you have in that organization. Wow, that's a phenomenal thing. So moving into your team space a little bit, what's one of the first things that you did with your team? If you could share just a little bit of maybe the mechanics of, how did you address everybody and what systems or strategies did you decide to put together quickly and what worked and, was there anything that blew up or?
Yeah. So it feels very surreal now to look back on the process. And luckily again, with technology, we have the ability to be able to work from home. And I remember when the coronavirus was just a little bit of a murmur, we had a staff meeting, and it was, we almost kind of joked about it. And we're like, the next week, just make sure everybody could work from home. If that will never happen, but just make sure you know how to get on to, our shared drive, and everybody just take a minute and make sure that could happen. But it felt so far away and almost silly to do. But I had a call from our program director Sunday night, about a month and a half ago, and probably about 5 weeks ago. And she just said, what if we did all have to work from home? And in the course of that conversation, Sunday evening at 5 to the next day, Monday morning at 9, we had developed our plan to let staff work from home. I mean, it really happened in a matter of hours. And our first week was, if you feel like you need to work from home, you can. And if you want to go into the office, we don't have a lot of public traffic, and we're pretty spread out, and we're a small team. But the first week was optional. And really, we just kind of punted. We just sort of made up. The idea was that everybody had to be on at a set time. So we decided Monday through Thursday, 9 to 5, everybody has to be on the clock, meaning they're accessible and they're working. And we decided to start every morning at 9 with a Zoom call, just as a way to set the day. And so we did that for a week, and we still, we're 5 or 6 weeks into working from home now, and we still every morning at 9 o'clock have a Zoom huddle, and it's just a chance to start the day, to check in, to make sure everybody's on the same page. So we spent a week working from home as an option, and then the second week it was mandatory. So everybody worked from home since then. It just all happened so quickly. It was really quite extraordinary that there were a lot less problems than we had anticipated. Everybody really figured out their way to make it work. And the first week or two of morning Zooms were really fun. We were laughing and showing our, slippers and bringing in pets. And then we hit a lull. The Zoom novelty has worn off quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So we are talking about, maybe a different staff member taking a morning where they are in charge of the thought-provoking question, or the fun, challenge for the day, or just something to keep it fun. Because the novelty has worn off at this point, and we want to make sure that we're still taking that time to connect. So keeping those 9 o'clock meetings are still just a way for everybody to see each other's face, for us to make any announcements, for us to communicate with the group. And we always try to share something mission focused. We have to put the why behind why we are doing what we're doing. So whether it's talking about a great match or something new that we're providing as far as a support, but just remembering why we're all figuring out how to work from home with kids in the background, or sitting in your basement freezing because that's where your home office is. Why are we doing this? And I think always coming back to mission is a way to provide that. But it happened in a whirlwind.
It did, didn't it? It did for everybody. Boy. Yeah, so much faster than what we, anticipated. Even when we knew some of the things that were coming before us, it seemed like we just blinked, and then it had all changed, and we blinked again and it changed. And, it seems the early period was very much that way. And if you were like me early on, social media was flooded with the most phenomenal and fun, creative ways to, get your team working together, talk to family, wind up your day. There was all kinds of, cooking together and happy hour together and singing and some really lovely, lovely things. And you're right. I think at about this point now, some of the novelty has worn off, and we're in the limbic space where it's messy in the middle. Right now, it's work, and it's continuing to put one foot in front of the other, and and accomplish your mission. Sell your product, whatever the company, whatever their mission really is. What would you say to other leaders during this crisis? What have you found that is, helpful or really insightful? Maybe some things that you haven't, anticipated before.
So for me, I think there was the first few weeks, and again, not at all the only ones having to do this. We were really wondering about our ability to weather this. I mean, there was a lot happening. There's a lot of needs. There's a lot of messaging out there. So the first couple of weeks, I think we were operating on adrenaline, and it was, we knew enough to know that in every crisis there's an opportunity, and you never want to let a crisis go to waste. So you always want to find the opportunities. And I think it took us a couple weeks to figure out our place in this particular pandemic or in this particular crisis. And so we were really just looking for opportunities, and that place of learning or trying to find our footing, I think was helpful for us. And I, as the leader of the organization, was messaging that pretty heavy. We have to find what our niche is. We have to find our opportunity in this, and really challenging the group to take a look at everything from that perspective. And man, they came back, I think, really framing that there is some abilities for us to really define ourselves with this was helpful for everybody to really take it come up from a completely different perspective. This is how we've always done it. And that's, I don't want to say it's out the window, because our mentoring mission is still very much alive, but all bets are off. And so I had to give the team the permission to let down our previous barriers or walls or framework and just look at everything from a completely different angle. And so things started to happen very organically. We had a volunteer who said, I can't be matched right now because we put a freeze on new matches. What can I do to help? And he happened to talk to somebody who was working with a family who was really struggling with food. And what am I going to do to feed my 3 grandkids that are home all day now? And so he thought, well, I know. And he got together a group of friends, and they got a ton of food and brought it. And we were able to take some food boxes to some of our families. So these very natural supports started popping up with education, and how are we going to help homeschool some of our kids, and access to mental health for some of our families that were really struggling. And so as we started to really just address the needs that were coming up and looking at everything from a new perspective, we found our niche right now. We have access to these families that don't have any other mechanism for support, and we gave ourselves permission to really expand what our support looks like right now based on the need. So I think and then I was able to validate that, like, this has always been our mission. Our mission looks this much bigger right now, and that's okay. And so as a leader, really giving everybody permission to look for solutions based on what's happening right now, I think that was hugely helpful. And we bring everything back to the people we're serving. Everything goes back to those people. And so I think making sure that always stays top of mind. And the other thing that I have to say that's been a lesson for me is the delegation, because things are happening so fast, because things are so outside of anything we've ever planned around, that I now am much more likely to say, this is a challenge, who wants to take this on? And letting it go to the team and letting them find a solution and try it out or test it and then come back and we can process it. So we're handing out problems to people on our team and letting them really explore how to solve that. It's happening quicker. We're more willing to make mistakes and pick ourselves up and try it again. So I have had to let go a lot of my process that I was very comfortable with and liked. But the team is rising. I mean, it's been really great to watch people rise to the occasion and own the solution, troubleshoot together. So it's changed the way I lead the team in some of those respects that I can't imagine will go back to the old way. But the pace was why. That you had to be able to make a decision so quickly or come up with a solution so quickly. We didn't have the luxury of planning and piloting and testing, and we just had to try it and go. And somebody said, building the plane while you're flying it. And we got lots of planes in the air in various stages of completion. But it's also helping, our team is showing strength they didn't know they had, or I didn't know they had as a result of this. So that permission to try new things has also been something that's been new that's come out of this.
Oh, there's a lot of gifts in that, right? So many things that you're learning about your team. And as you mentioned, things they must be learning about themselves in addition to that, and learning to be really agile, right? That's kind of the buzzword often used in business now, but doesn't always necessarily apply in nonprofit worlds and things like that. But it really is learning to be agile and saying, we're just going to have to go and figure this out. We don't get to test and try and evaluate and do a study on it and, you know, come back and all those things. And knowing what I know about you as well, you're very much a problem solver and a doer. And so I would imagine that delegating on a whim all the time is something that's new as well.
It is new, and it's been great. The other, and in full transparency, we are experiencing a little bit of, I'm calling it flexibility fatigue. So we're to the point now where we're having to have a lot of grace with some of our team, and I'm encouraging mental health days, or take a half day to go to the park, or go on a walk, or go sit in your garden, because we have been agile and moving and changing so rapidly for going on about 5 weeks now, that we're starting to see a little fatigue with it. And I think one of the great things coming out of all of this is our prioritization of work and life, and how do you balance that, and allowing some of that grace for people to just say, I'm done. My brain is tired. My heart is tired. Our match support calls are almost doubling in length right now, because we're talking to these families that just have some real hard things happening, and that's hard to absorb all day long. So it's just a fresh way to look at taking care of ourselves and our families, because there's definitely some fatigue out there. So we're getting to now flex that muscle, just really saying I need help when I need help, allowing people to take the time that they need, or whatever it is they need to recharge, because we've been operating fast and furious for a while, and I think that adrenaline is worn off, and people are genuinely starting to feel a little tired from it. So now we get to practice taking care of ourselves, which is great. That's a great lesson to learn.
Absolutely, it is, and crucial to being resilient and maintaining productivity and all those things that we want to show up as every day. Tell me a little bit about fundraising. Obviously, the organization still has bills to pay and salaries to meet and matches to support. I don't know if people know, but once you make a match, there's a lot of oversight and communication and support in maintaining that match all the time throughout the years that they're together. So how are you addressing fundraising? Did you put it on hold, or are you just in a good spot, or?
Oh no, you never get to put it on hold. I mean, it's like any business. I mean, you need your revenue in order to continue to do what you're doing. It's been an interesting process. So we have had to reschedule at least our first largest fundraising event of the year, and depending on how long this continues, we'll continue to modify that schedule. But I think it's done the fundraising piece of this for us has done two things for us, or we've taken, I think there's two things that come to mind when you ask that question. And the first is really defining who we are right now and what our value is. So again, going back to that, dropping all of our preconceived notions of how great and wonderful we are and why people should fund us. That message has radically changed right now. And we still have, again, our really strong mentoring component, but we have to be able to speak to right now. So why are we important right now? And we've been able to really define that in a way that makes sense to us, that we feel good about. And it's given us the messaging as we go out to solicit funds, why we are vital to the community right now. And really it's because we are continuing to serve 100% of our matches, our waitlist families. We have not scaled back the number of children and families we're serving. We are maintaining our group. And that's a powerful message, because so many other of their support systems have gone either dormant or been pulled right now because of the pandemic, school and daycare, and even things like church, which are a huge support for our families. So we've really been able to look at, again, what is our opportunity right now, and how do we message that in the best way possible so that people who can see what we're doing in the value can support us financially. So it's really helped us fine-tune our story. And then as we are taking a fresh look at all of our events, because we may have to do them virtually. So, sometimes we've done it because we've always done it that way isn't isn't the best way to look at something long term. And so everything has had a fresh set of eyes on it. We've turned it all up on its head. And if we have to go virtual, if we have to go in small groups, we've just really had to look at what are we trying to do with our events outside of raise money? How do we capitalize on that piece of it? And so we get to take these really fresh, candid looks at our events and what we're trying to accomplish with them so that we can maintain that if we do have to do it in a completely different forum. So it's been great. We've had some really great ideas. We've drawn on some resources we never thought we would. And I think we're going to have some really good ideas that we'll use long term that never would have come if we hadn't had this particular situation and had to take a look at it from a completely different event or a different perspective. And the last thing I'll say about fundraising, which has been really interesting, is we've gotten to have conversations with people that we never would have if not for this pandemic. So it's really opened some doors for us in a way that I never would have anticipated. And so we talk about coming out on the other end of this stronger. And I at first thought that was kind of just something people said to make you feel better during a hard time. But the opportunities for conversations and for familiarizing our agency with people who are funding good work in the community, we've had more opportunities for those conversations than I think we would have had if us not be in this particular situation. So it's been really interesting, the conversations we've had and the doors some of our board members and our most closely connected people are willing to open because of this particular situation. So coming out of this stronger at the end is not outside of the realm of possibility, I think. But we
love that outlook. Love that outlook. How, obviously on the fundraising note, for those watching outside of Idaho, coming up just shortly, we have an annual Idaho Gives campaign where all types of nonprofits have a period of time. It's usually a day, and now it's lengthened. However, can jump on the website and they can give to their favorite organization or organizations, and talk to that for just a second. And then really, how can businesses and communities help right now? What does the organization need the most? So.
Well, we're really hopeful for Idaho Gives. It's typically a one day of giving, and I think most states have a similar campaign happening, usually a one day of giving. I don't know if other states are extending that time. I did hear that Arizona just had their one day of giving and broke records for giving, and not by a small margin, by a pretty substantial margin. They broke records on the amount of money they brought in. And so we're actually really hopeful. I think people want to help, and I think people who are in a position to be able to even just donate $5 or $10 all the way up to larger gifts want to do something right now. And so there's this really beautiful awakening happening for all of us, that we are all in this together, and that we all do benefit from the greater community growing and thriving and being well. And so I think people are really feeling the connectivity right now. And so we're excited for Idaho Gives because we're excited to see the community come together, and it appeals to all levels of donors. So I think it's a very empowering event for all of us. Of course, the funding is huge for us. So we're excited to raise a little bit of money, but really to raise awareness for all of the good work that's happening here in our community. So we're hopeful, we're ready to go. I think it starts at the end of this week. So we've got our website up and our platform and our messaging, and we're ready to get out there and bang the drum with everybody else and rally some support. But and so to the second part of your question, what can people do? Funding is huge. Funding allows an organization to do what they do best on a bigger scale. So I always like to encourage people to donate to Big Brothers Big Sisters if you're looking for a cause to back that really does change lives and make a significant impact. But really, at the end of the day, I would encourage anyone to just what resonates with you, what's important to you, and do what you can. If it's a $5 donation to a couple different organizations, if it's just sharing Idaho Gives or whatever your state's Day of Giving message is, but take some action to get involved and be part of the solution in whatever way makes sense for you, in whatever cause makes sense for you. Because I think sitting on your couch wishing things were different is only going to get us so far. I think we have to move beyond the wishing to the acting. And there's lots of ways to do that. But we've seen that, what I do impacts what you do, Deanna. It impacts your day. It impacts the people that are listening. We're all in this together. And I think we all have to take action to move us forward and get us through this. So whatever organization you believe in, whatever level makes sense for you, just do something to help us all come together, because it's only going to be us coming together that's going to make us get through this stronger at the other end. And I believe that will happen. When, I'm not sure, and what that'll look like, I'm still kind of waiting. But I think doing something to get to the end is going to help all of us get through this in the best way possible.
Outstanding, absolutely. And that's a powerful message out to the community, because people do want to help. I come across those wanting to do that in conversations every single day. And so thanks for giving that some direction. We'll just wind this up. I'll give you the final word and whatever piece you want to share, maybe that we didn't talk about. I know we could probably talk another, half an hour, but yeah, over to you.
Well, I think my message, and this is one of the biggest lessons that I've learned through all of this, is the grace that we're allowing each other and the grace that we're allowing ourselves. We've for a long time, at least I have really, if I work harder, if I try more, if I do all these things, my whole effort was to get out of this place of unknown and this place of uncertainty if I planned really well and I strategized really well. And I think what this has shown is that we all are still pretty vulnerable out there, and things can change really quickly. And so I think allowing grace in our neighbors and our community members and in ourselves as we all try to get through this the best way that we can, it really matters. And that resiliency piece of not just motoring through the hard times, but really taking the time to refill your cup and make yourself feel better, recharge, fill your battery or charge your battery. Taking that time is important, because then you can continue to do the hard work that it's going to take to get us all through this and to build a stronger and a better community. So I'm just asking everybody to allow each other and themselves as much grace and understanding as possible, because recognizing this is a difficult time. And then when you're ready, taking the next step, whether it's making donations, volunteering, helping your neighbor at the grocery store, whatever that looks like. But when you're ready, taking some action to make this world and our community a better place is hugely important. And it may seem small, but it makes a really big difference.
It makes a huge difference, right? You're absolutely correct in that messaging. We're going to have to join arms and walk through all this together. It's new for everybody, no matter what you're doing out there in the world on a daily basis. So outstanding. Emily Johnson, CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Southwest Idaho. I appreciate your time immensely today.
Thank you
for sharing with us. Yeah, absolutely. We'll share this out with the world, and hopefully people will be able to take a nugget or two and insert it into their world as well.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks. Take care.
Thanks, Deanna.